Public squares have been at the heart of urban life for thousands of years, serving as social, political, and commercial hubs. Today, many cities are rediscovering the importance of these spaces. Why were public squares so important? How did they fall out of favor, and why are they making a comeback? Let's explore the history, decline, and revival of these iconic urban spaces. Public squares trace their origins back to some of the world's earliest civilizations. Take the Agora of Athens, for example. Established in the 6th century BCE, this massive public square covered 30,000 square meters and was the center of public life in ancient Greece. It wasn't just a marketplace, but also a place for civic discussions, law courts, and festivals. The Agora became a symbol of Greek democracy, where philosophers like Socrates held dialogues that shaped Western thought. Similarly, the Roman Forum in ancient Rome was the focal point of the Roman Empire's political and public life. At its peak, the Roman Forum was 250 meters long and 170 meters wide, surrounded by temples, government buildings, and markets. It hosted public speeches, criminal trials, and military parades, embodying Rome's imperial power. In the Middle Ages, urban growth shifted, and many cities lost the centrality of public squares. Cities like London and Paris were built with winding, narrow streets designed for defense rather than open civic engagement. Public life in medieval cities became decentralized, focusing on smaller market squares or town halls rather than grand public spaces. For instance, by the 1300s, London's population exceeded 50,000 people, but its streets were a labyrinth of alleyways with little room for expansive squares. This decentralized urban design made cities more defensible but left them with fewer large, open public spaces. However, certain cities, like Venice, preserved large squares. The Piazza San Marco, developed in the 12th century, covered 12,000 square meters and became a cultural hub where politics, trade, and festivals blended. During the Renaissance, cities in Europe began to revive and redefine their public spaces. Italy became a center of this revival. For instance, Florence's Piazza della Signoria, established in the 14th century, was designed as a monumental space for public gatherings and political events. This square measures approximately 4,500 square meters and features the Palazzo Vecchio, symbolizing Florence's political power. Similarly, Rome saw an ambitious urban transformation under Pope Sixtus V in the late 1500s. His urban plan included the creation of vast squares like Piazza del Popolo, which measures around 17,000 square meters, and used straight roads to connect these public spaces. These spaces became important gathering points, helping to navigate Rome's growing population of over 100,000 residents at the time. In Paris, Place des Vosges, created in 1605, was the first planned square in France, measuring 140 meters by 140 meters. It became a model for the orderly urban development of public squares across Europe. The Industrial Revolution in the 19th century marked a period of urban expansion, but often at the cost of public spaces. Cities like London and New York exploded in population. By 1900, London's population had swelled to 6.5 million, and New York had reached 3.4 million. The rapid pace of industrialization meant that urban spaces were increasingly devoted to factories, roads, and housing to accommodate the influx of workers. Cities shifted focus to traffic, commerce, and housing, neglecting public squares. For example, Chicago, founded in 1837, focused on a grid system for efficient traffic and commerce, rather than large open squares. The car became central to urban planning, and streets began to dominate urban design. Despite their decline during the industrial era, public squares have seen a resurgence in recent decades as cities recognize their importance for walkability, social life, and environmental sustainability. The growing focus on urban livability, reducing car dependency, and promoting public health has brought back the need for communal spaces. Times Square provides a striking case of this modern revival. In 2009, parts of it were closed to vehicular traffic, and today it functions primarily as a pedestrian plaza. This transformation has boosted foot traffic from 360,000 daily visitors to over 450,000 people per day, turning Times Square into one of the most visited places in the world. Potsdamer Platz in Berlin, once a no-man's land during the Cold War, was completely rebuilt in the 1990s. Covering 70,000 square meters, it has been restored as a key public gathering space. Now, it's a commercial and social hub, drawing millions of visitors every year. In some cities, parks have taken on the role of public squares. Central Park in New York City, designed by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vose in 1858, is one of the most famous examples. Covering 3.41 square kilometers, it was created to give the city's burgeoning population a green lung, a place for recreation and relaxation amidst the growing industrial sprawl. Today, cities like Copenhagen are making similar moves. Copenhagen has developed an ambitious plan to ensure that every citizen lives within 300 meters of a green space. This strategy prioritizes parks and public squares as vital parts of urban life, promoting walkability, environmental health, and social interaction. In Paris, the famous Place de la République was redesigned in 2013 to prioritize pedestrians, with 70% of the square now reserved for walkers and cyclists. The redesign has made it one of the most vibrant public squares in Europe. As cities face the challenges of rapid population growth, climate change, and sustainability, public squares, or their modern equivalents, will continue to play a vital role. Cities like Barcelona are expanding pedestrian zones to replace traffic-dominated streets with public spaces. Barcelona's Superblocks project aims to reduce traffic by 21%, freeing up streets for community activities and turning intersections into small public squares. The importance of public squares goes beyond aesthetics. They foster a sense of community, promote sustainability, and enhance urban quality of life. In the 21st century, as urban planners grapple with the demands of growing cities, public squares are no longer a relic of the past, they are essential to our urban future.